Avril certainly has had an effect on this town. I think she has put the town of Napanee on the world map.
I know Napanee before Avril and after Avril, and I find it very ironic that now she's the star of the town.
Napanee really hit the forefront around the time of the Grammys. There was a real buzz. There's a story of somebody from Argentina or from Sweden who's wanted to see what her hometown looks like because she's mentioned it so many times.
That's the way it is with most small towns. You know, everyone sort of sticks together and the roots behind their own.
When you heard her sing, you knew that she had the ability to sing.
Her first guitar was a Yamaha that she bought here.
She had a little music set up downstairs in her basement. She'd always practice every day.
Avril Lavigne comes along, and all of a sudden, around the world, people know what Napanee is.
The population in Napanee is 15,000 people. In the town, in the urban area, about 8,000 people.
We're halfway between Kingston and Belleville, about half an hour in either direction.
Napaneans? I think that's what we call ourselves. It's usually a newspaper reporter that will call you a Napanean, but people from Napanee don't usually refer to themselves that way.
I think it's a Mohawk name, but I might be wrong. But it's a native name that is supposed to mean running water.
There's many different beliefs on where the name came from, but the earliest records that have been found are on old French maps.
The name comes from the word, I believe, Apnea, which means near the falls.
It was probably an Indian name for grist, had something to do with the power at the falls to make flour.
The whole area is full of history, you know, from the earliest settlers.
The town hall in Napanee is a National Historic Site, and that's based on the fact that Sir John A. Macdonald gave his last public speech on that site.
It was the first place Sir John A. came to in Canada and was known to have partied here.
Napanee has traditionally been an agricultural center, and it's grown into becoming a key manufacturing community. I think Avril's our best ambassador for the community. She certainly mentions it wherever she can, and the media seems to really pick up on it. Whenever you read an out-of-town newspaper, it always seems to say Avril Lavigne from Napanee, Ontario, who hails from Napanee, Ontario. And you don't see that with all other kinds of performers.
We have our theater here in town, and we've had musicals, which they have performed at the theater as well as at the high school. I think the theater was a great launching point for Avril as well. We had just recently done a musical in town called Your Good Man, Charlie Brown, and that was Avril's really first appearance on stage that I know of in Napanee.
I worked with Avril in a show called Your Good Man, Charlie Brown, about 1995. She was about 11 years old at that point, and she played Sally, Charlie Brown's little sister. She was just a little kid back then. She didn't really have too much to say because she had a small part.
She was quite noticeable because she had a lot of energy. She was a bundle of energy. She had big yellow blonde hair, and I mean, it was like quite large. It was this little kid, and her hair seemed as big as she was, you know. So that was the first thing that was noticeable. But it didn't take long before we realized she had a little bit of a personality.
After that, a couple of years later, we worked on a show called Godspell, where she had a more interesting role. It's a musical with no specific parts for a lot of the younger people in it, but she was the kind of kid who just came out and didn't need direction. She just started doing her own thing in the front of the stage, and the director says, yep, that's perfect, don't change a word. She sang the song Day by Day, and it would normally be a song where you'd get up on the stage and trying to get the audience involved a little bit and clap your hands. Well, she jumped right off the stage, and she'd march back up and down through the audience, clapping her hands, getting the people on their feet. She brought the whole place to life. She was a tremendous talent back then.
I first saw Avril performing at an outdoor theater event at a historical home in town called the McPherson House. And that was called the Nessie Days. And this story was about Sir John A. Macdonald's young days here in Napanee visiting his uncle McPherson.
She, I think, played a barmaid, and there was some musical parts singing to it as well because it was a bunch of guys, including Sir John A., having a little bit too much to drink in a tavern.
As the song started, she was sweeping up around the bar and ultimately joined in with the, let's say, the drinking men. And that was basically her whole role in the play.
She was great with the acting. She was very good on stage. She's great stage presence, and her confidence level was very high. But when you heard her sing and you saw her self-confidence when she was out there getting the crowd going, you knew that she had the ability to sing.
She was a big fan of Shania Twain and country songs at the time.
One of the local country music stations in Kingston had a contest, and people submitted tapes, and I think they had to have a Shania song, and they submitted these on tape.
In a brown paper bag, almost at the end of the contest, in comes this great tape of this little girl who was all of I guess she just turned 14 at the time. And she did a great rendition of a Shania Twain song, because that was sort of the mandate. And I thought, yeah, I like that. And the winner got to go on stage with Shania Twain.
I think there was 50 contestants, and she won. And she went to go sing, she got to sing a Shania song with Shania, so on stage at the Corral Center, which was a big deal. No one in the industry really knew anything about that.
I just thought it would be great to run a contest in every city that I was in and invite somebody up on stage, because I just thought you never know. There could be somebody out there who was as serious as I was.
I drove her in the Durango for Country 96, and I was more nervous than she was.
There were a whole gang of us that went up to support her, because this really was a big thrill for a local gal to be singing with a major international star.
What, 25, 30,000 people at the Corral Center? Not a nervous bone in her body. I was shaking, but she actually had the wherewithal to turn around and wave to the crowd.
I just met her on stage. Just walked out on stage and was like, "Hi, to meet you."
Shania would talk a little bit and asked Avril, you know, what would you like to do when you grow up? Because she was young. What would you like to do? And she said, well, I'd like to be a singer.
Small towns breed big dreams. You want to be able to leave that small town. There's got to be something else out there for you. And I think the cool thing about Avril is, yeah, she was a victim of that. You know, you couldn't keep, that small town could not keep her contained.
Her heart was set on becoming a musician, and she was always writing songs at her house and stuff. And she had a little music set up downstairs in her basement. She'd always practice every day, and her heart was set on, and she knew she was going to make it. My buddies tend to give me a hard time once in a while, but now it's kind of faded out of the picture. But they always used to joke about how, like, oh, wow, you could be the complicated person or whatever.
Music seems to be a part of life, you know, for people in Napanee especially. It seems to be just something that's part of the culture, the fabric.
I think the town is incredibly important, because I think she was bored to tears a lot of the time. But I think a small town, when you're in a small town, you just feel like you're closed in. You want to know the internet. You've got everything out there, and you're sort of lost in this. You know, you're looking out your window going, there's got to be more than this. And I think it's like a one-horse town. But I think that's what, you know, Shania from Timmins and Celine from, you know, Quebec, I think it just, they dream big.
Our school was always big on the music more than sports and stuff.
At Napanee District Secondary School, we have a huge performance arts program for our students. We have a music program that includes a traditional instrumental music program, a straight percussion program, a straight guitar program, a vocal music program, a music theater program. So we're really quite active in the performance arts areas all around. I think Avril created her own success, and there are none of us here that would take any of that away from her. However, this is a really big performance community, and I think that has probably helped her a little bit to grow up in a community where the performance arts are highly respected and highly desirable.
I was asked to be, I guess it must be 6 years ago now, one of the judges at the Napanee Fair, and Avril sang at that fair. And we knew at that time that Avril had the stage appearance to go somewhere in the music industry, and by the way, we put her in second.
She actually bought her first guitar from Bill, and her first guitar was a Yamaha that she bought here.
The whole model for Avril was she was going to write songs. She was going to be a serious artist, and that was ingrained in her, and that's what people care about. Tell them about your experiences with your mother, father, church, school. Whatever your experience is, tell them about it. That's what they want to know about, because everybody can relate to that. So that's what she was taught.
Her parents were very, let's say, very good about taking her to various venues to sing. and she always had her tapes. And either her father or I know myself at times put her music on for her, and she sang.
She was singing around this local area between Kingston and Belleville. She was always on stage. She was loving it, country, gospel, that sort of thing. And she was big in our productions, our school productions as well. She was always in a lead position.
I put together a CD called The Quincy Spirit, and Avril sang a song called Touch the Sky.
And like a tree, I can touch the sky with my feet on the ground.
And that was the first song ever recorded by Avril, was Touch the Sky. That was a sort of an instrumental point in her musical start.
That was probably the first performance that Avril had done on CD, and it was a beautiful performance, and her voice. I mean, I think a lot of the songs that she does now, she doesn't show off her voice enough. I think people just think, oh, she's like a pop star, but they don't realize that the girl can really sing. And I think that in those country songs, I think it really came out a lot more.
Back then, like all kids, they tend to be somewhat influenced, by the sort of music their parents are listening to. And of course, Avril's parents were listening to sort of country and gospel type music, and that's what she was doing in the beginning.
Used to carry this big old world on my shoulders and back. I used to lie inside my room, wondering where I'm at.
I think people were always amazed at how this petite little gal could belt out such a tune. I mean, for a little gal, she had a big voice, and that was certainly quite amazing.
Every Friday night, chapters would have a local artist, whether it be an author or someone who was singing. And Avril would come every Friday night on a regular basis. And one Friday night, we had a gentleman that came in and heard her. He had a friend, and he wanted to introduce Avril to this friend. The friend came, I think it was the next Friday night, and heard Avril sing, and that was Avril's first manager.
I saw a karaoke singer singing new country, and that's where she grew up, so that's all she really knew. But what I saw was just a beautiful kid, and that eye contact, the confidence, and the way she looked at the audience, and the way she dealt with people.
When we don't talk, when we don't touch, when it doesn't feel like we're even in love, it matters to me. When I don't know what to say, don't know what to do, don't know if it really even matters to you. How can I make you see it matters to me?
My whole motto for her was Alanis Morissette. I lived in Ottawa, I read everything, and I knew Alanis' teen years as opposed to when she hit her 20s and went to LA and met Glenn Ballard. And I mean, I didn't want Avril to go through that teen mess of not knowing who you are and sort of everyone telling you, you're pop, you're this or that. Avril was going to make up for herself what she was going to become. I was going to be the blocker for her, and we were going to make great inroads musically. And I knew it would be a heavier music because she has an attitude.
The Sun Grammy Night party was a big deal in Napanee. There was more than 600 people here. People had to win a raffle in order to go. And so that meant you had a diverse audience. You had anyone from small primary kids to teenagers who were screaming. And you had parents, moms, dads, grandparents, the whole 9 yards. You had a pretty good cross-section of Napanee there. And what was great was they were there to show support for Avril, but also we had a segment where local bands were featured, and not just the thriving punk scene that is here in Napanee, but also people who sing country music, people who do more folk music, straight-on rock. It was a pretty good venue for them.
This party was hugely important to the community. It was an opportunity for the community, both the school and the greater Napanee community at large, to come together to celebrate one of its own.
He was a skater boy, she said see you later boy. He wasn't good enough for her. Now he's a superstar. His guitar, just your pretty face, see what he's worth.
people are always bored, and there's always people downtown. Actually, there's laws that you can't skateboard on the sidewalks downtown, but people still do. There's probably at least 50 kids around the town right now who would be skateboarding maybe like just up the road or around at the courthouse.
We have a skateboard-free zone downtown. We built a skate park out by Springside Park, which is just outside the town, just a stone's throw. But we had problems with it downtown, and so we had to put a bylaw in for skate-free zone. So we did that, and we're enforcing that. We have to try and keep them off the main street in our little town.
I don't know if there's more female skaters per se, but there's definitely more females dressing like Avril. Dressing like Avril.
When Avril used to shop in West 49, she would dress the typical way that she is now with the Dickies pants, or Dickies is a big brand for us, always has been before Avril started shopping in our store. Wristbands, you know, that sort of traditional, the bulky skate shoe that a lot of girls like to wear.
Avril Lavigne's definitely had an influence on fashion in general, mainly targeted towards younger females.
That's so funny.
Is that a trend?
Funny, I'm starting to trend.
Does stuff like that freak you out yet?
Dude, that's weird, man. She's got stars on her shirt like me in the video.
I was watching at home at the time there, and all of a sudden she walked out and had the Home Hardware Napanee shirt on, an old soccer shirt. I had to take a second look there. I couldn't believe it. And then a couple of my buddies started calling me after that, just making sure I was watching, you know, saying how crazy it was. Here she is on Saturday Night Live wearing a Home Hardware Napanee shirt. And then the next day we ended up getting a couple calls here, maybe 5 or 6, 10 type thing, just people wanting to know if we sold the shirts or whatever. So we said we were going to start getting a few in. And then next thing you know, we got about 40 calls the next day, and then about 50 the next day type thing, and then it was like steady 50 to 100 calls for about the next month and a half straight, people wanting these shirts.
Even if it was just a Home Hardware soccer shirt she wore, was out there on the world stage. That was so cool. Even the guys, you know, behind that shirt say you couldn't buy that kind of publicity.
I originally printed the first shirt that she wore, I'm going to say when she was probably 8 or 9 years old. And I've printed all the other shirts since then for the Home Hardware production. We printed complete approximately 16,000 shirts.
Actually, no, we're giving them a check for $13,000 a couple months down the road there when Avril did her little Grammy night at the high school here in town.
I was very happy that she had chosen to keep the work in town. Keeps everybody here working, and it shows her dedication to her hometown.
Seeing that, it was kind of like, you know, I think it was for Napanee. People in Napanee, they were going, hey, this is really cool. That's the Home Hardware T-shirt. That's the T-shirt she wore from the town here. But I mean, ultimately, it was also being Canadian. Saying, oh, that's cool. It's sort of like wearing the Canadian flag.
That's celebrity. I mean, you put, you know, a young, charismatic kid on television and wearing a ragged T-shirt from her hometown, and who would ever think that people would pick up on that? But that's how insightful people are. I mean, they really do watch.
I think she enjoyed growing up here and had a good life here, enjoyed her sports activities, and people here respond very well to her in her music. And most people around here are very proud to say that she's from Napanee.
There's lots of stories about people coming to the community, driving along the 401, seeing Napanee and saying, wait, that's Avril's hometown, let's go in and take a look, and maybe buying lunch.
La Pizzeria gets, on any given day, people will come into La Pizzeria and be like, this is the Avril place, can I get pictures? There's pictures of Avril in there. You can tell it's a tourist attraction.
Letters from all over the world asking for the menu. And if you visit Napanee, you know, if you're a fan of Avril, you have to have pizza at La Pizzeria.
Welcome, Starville, to La Pizzeria, Avril Lavigne's favorite pizza parlor. Avril's pizza is pepperoni, mushrooms, and green olives with a little bit extra cheese on it. Since Avril Lavigne became famous, my business has doubled. Families with kids, they coming in every day, Avril special, Avril special, Avril special. Even kids, the mother said to them, you know, you don't like olives. He said, no, Avril likes olives, I like olives.
Her success has been huge, especially on the musical community here. There's just a sense of optimism amongst the musicians here.
She shows that it can be done, and I guess that's fuel to the fire for anybody who's in this kind of business.
She's done so much for the town. She's brought so much back here, and she's used so many different references. Like she's referred to a pizza place in town here, and the guy was doing all right before, but now he does tremendous business, and he's a nice guy. He deserves it. And the home hardware store has sold so many of those red Avril shirts, and all that money went to charity locally, so that really helped out. So she's done great things for Napanee. I can't see her ever stopping.
We do know that we have people that are visiting our town because of Avril, and we certainly hope it draws more.
Avril belongs to the world now, more so than to Napanee.
I don't think she's ever going to lose Napanee because she's kept it with her through this huge success, and I think she'll always be able to go back home.
Maybe part of her angst comes from being confined to a small town and not liking school and that sort of thing.
I don't think Avril will ever move back to Napanee, but I think it'll always, be in her heart, it'll always be in her mind, and she'll certainly come back to visit. You have to. It's your hometown.
She's charted this course since she was young, so I think she's probably in it for the long haul, and we'll probably be here to follow her. I mean, she's our hometown girl.
I want bells to ring, the choir to sing, the white dress again.